In 2006, three missionary women disappeared near the Santa Cruz border town, vanished without a trace during a routine humanitarian trip. For years, not a single clue surfaced. That is, until a strange code appeared inside a digital Bible nearly 2 decades later. What started as a quiet act of faith would unravel into one of the most disturbing organized crime scandals tied to a religious front, and only one woman would live to tell the story. Today, we follow a trail of hidden notes, buried evidence, and a Bible verse no one was meant to decode. Stay with us until the end, because the truth behind this 17-year-old disappearance will leave you speechless. And before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your city and state. And just like that, the sun set on their voices. No one knew it then, but as Rachel Lynn waved goodbye from the church steps, holding a thermos of coffee and her worn leather Bible, it would be the last time anyone in El Paso saw her, Miriam O'Donnell or Sarah Joy, alive. The three women had shared everything: dorm rooms during theology training, soup kitchens on Christmas, and prayers whispered through hospital corridors. That Thursday afternoon in April 2006, they loaded medical supplies into the back of a borrowed white van, marked with the Church of Light symbol, and pulled out of the gravel lot with the windows rolled down, gospel music drifting behind them. They were headed to Santa Cruz, a dusty town near the Mexico border, where they planned to offer mobile clinics and faith outreach to migrant families living off the grid. Each of them had left something small behind, as if unintentionally seeding their absence. Rachel had scribbled "back by 9" on a sticky note taped to the church fridge. Miriam had left a voicemail for her younger brother that quoted Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Sarah had packed a half-read devotional book under the passenger seat, still dog-eared at the chapter titled "When Silence Feels Like Abandonment." When the van failed to return that night, there was no panic, just assumptions. Maybe the road conditions worsened. Maybe they were delayed helping someone. But by Friday morning, when Pastor Harlan arrived to open the chapel and found Rachel's prayer shawl still folded on the pew where she always sat for sunrise meditation, he knew something wasn't right. The police search was swift but shallow. 2 days later, the van was located in a barren rest stop just outside Santa Cruz. The keys were still in the ignition. The doors were unlocked. Their phones were found inside, powered off. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No tire tracks. No note. Just a crushed bottle of hand sanitizer rolling under the front seat and Sarah's devotional book, closed now, resting neatly on the dashboard. What followed was confusion that hardened into fear. The authorities suggested cartel involvement. Local whispers mentioned the women may have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, but without evidence, the case quickly cooled. News vans came and went. The families clutched press photos, prayed on sidewalks, and clung to scripture while officials moved on. In El Paso, the church kept their candles burning for weeks. Rachel's father led the Wednesday night prayer group even when his voice cracked halfway through. Miriam's mother, a retired nurse, stood outside the state courthouse with a poster that read, "They went to serve. They didn't deserve to vanish." But time is a cruel sieve, and as months turned into years, memories thinned like smoke. Now, 17 years later, the only trace of their story sits on a dusty corkboard in the church's back hallway. A fading flyer, corners curled from heat, shows three smiling faces beneath the bold black word "missing." Most of the congregation passes by without looking, except one, Elias, a teenage boy who doesn't remember their voices, but somehow still feels the weight of their silence. What he finds next will crack that silence wide open, from a place no one ever expected. But not everyone had forgotten. One late Sunday afternoon, as golden light streamed across a quiet living room in East El Paso, 17-year-old Elias Santiago sat hunched over a worn laptop, thumbing through scripture for his senior church history project. He wasn't particularly devout, at least not in the way his abuela wished, but something about the book of Isaiah had drawn him in. Maybe it was the poetry, maybe it was the quiet grief behind the words, or maybe it was the fact that, when he searched for old sermon notes online, he stumbled across something no one was meant to see. He found it by accident, a link on the Church of Light's outdated digital archive. Isaiah annotated, it said. No author, no date, just a simple download button. With a shrug, Elias clicked. The file opened in a clunky Bible app he rarely used, but the moment he scrolled to chapter 42, he paused. Something was off. The verses were standard, but in the margins were notations in small gray text, barely visible, a string of numbers, then a line of jumbled letters, and under verse 16, Rachel lives. He blinked, scrolled back, then forward again. Who was Rachel? And why would someone write that in a Bible file? He called out to his grandmother, Lydia, who was folding laundry in the kitchen. A woman of strong faith and sharper instincts, Lydia had once sung in the Church of Light choir before leaving the congregation in 2009, unable to shake what she called unholy hushes. Elias showed her the screen, and as she leaned in, her eyes widened, the towel falling from her hands. "That's her name," she whispered. "Rachel Lynn, one of the missing girls, Dios mío." Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. The letters matched initials she remembered from old prayer lists. The numbers resembled dates, but with something off. "This wasn't random," she said quietly. "This was written with purpose." They printed the file and drove across town to the modest apartment of Thomas Alvarez, a retired deacon and former technology manager for the church. He hadn't spoken about the disappearance in years, but when he saw the code, especially the phrase "Rachel lives," his face turned pale. He reached for his old reading glasses with shaking hands. Thomas explained that while Rachel had taken part in transcribing sermon notes digitally before her trip, she had also requested access to the Bible editing software, something only a handful of people knew how to use. "If anyone could embed a hidden message into the scripture," he said slowly, "it would have been her." The next day, the three of them walked into the El Paso County Police Department, file in hand. Detective Carla Morno, who had just transferred back from Laredo, agreed to meet with them. She listened quietly, her eyes locked on the printed page. After years of dust and dead ends, something about this felt alive. Elias opened his laptop again. This time, he projected the app onto a nearby monitor. The cryptic text hovered beneath Isaiah's verse, "And I will lead the blind by ways they have not known." Carla leaned in. "Can we enhance that?" A technician pulled the metadata from the file. Hidden in the code were image references, embedded hyperlinks, and time stamps, all pointing to one digital folder. But that folder no longer existed on the church's official site. Elias looked up, voice quiet. "It's like someone erased it." Carla pressed her lips together. "Or someone didn't want it found." A screenshot was saved, cryptic symbols overlaid on holy text, like a cipher inside a prayer. The image would later become the front page of the reopened case file. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Carla turned toward them. "You may have just reopened a case everyone buried 17 years ago." Her voice softened. Whatever Rachel was trying to say, she trusted that someone would one day find it. And that code, barely visible beneath the words of a prophet, pointed to a place most had forgotten, but someone had never truly let go. With that code revived and the case reopened, the next logical step was to retrace the Church of Light's forgotten branches. Those remote facilities tied to the network but left off official documents. One of them stood just outside Santa Cruz, shielded by nothing more than chain-link fencing and dry mesquite trees. It was an old religious orphanage named St. Mercy's, long abandoned, but once home to dozens of undocumented girls. The paint had peeled from the sign, and the playground out front was rusted still, as if time itself had frozen the moment the church shuttered the doors. Detective Carla Morno, along with two federal agents, arrived on site under a quiet warrant. The main building was empty, dusty hymnals stacked in pews, broken crucifix on the chapel floor, rooms that smelled of mildew and disinfectant. But it wasn't the building itself that drew Carla's eye. Behind the orphanage, past a sagging section of the fence, stood an old metal shed. The door was padlocked, the hinges rusted brown and orange. Vines curled up one side like fingers trying to hold it shut. A storage unit. One agent asked. Carla didn't answer. She reached for the bolt cutters. Inside, the air was sour, thick with rot and silence. They shined their flashlights across walls lined with forgotten bins, discarded cribs, a toppled wooden cross. The floor creaked under their weight. In the far corner sat a rotting twin mattress, sunken in the middle like it had cradled someone's body for far too long. Nearby, stacks of plastic storage bins labeled only with numbers. They opened the first. Inside were cassette tapes, brittle and clouded. Photographs, too. Black and white headshots of young girls with handwritten names and dates scrawled on the back. Many looked no older than 12. In the second bin, under a folded choir robe and a cracked hymnal, they found a single cassette labeled by hand. S.J. Testimony. Carla's breath caught. She slipped it into the old player brought along for evidence capture and pressed play. The tape crackled. A girl's voice came through, trembling, strained. "My name is Sarah Joy," she whispered. "If someone finds this, please listen." What followed was 7 minutes of haunting testimony. Prayers muttered between sobs, mentions of rituals, hunger, and girls, not surviving purification. Her voice broke when she described Rachel holding her hand in the dark, humming old church songs to keep the fear at bay. "She told me God sees," Sarah said, "even when the others pretend not to." One agent turned away. Carla stood still, eyes locked on the player. That voice didn't belong to a ghost. It belonged to a girl who had lived through something and left this message in case she didn't. Beneath the player, Carla spotted a red-bound notebook wedged beneath the crate. The cover was dusty but intact. Inside the front flap in slanted cursive was a name, Rachel Lynn, her journal missing since 2006. They opened it carefully. Its pages, yellowed and damp, held neat handwriting, scripture references, and observations of the orphanage, notes about locked doors, bruises, whispered threats. In the center fold, in blue ink slightly smeared with what could have been tears or rain, Rachel had written, "We are not forgotten. God sees, even in silence." The agents fell quiet. Carla placed a gloved hand over the journal as if to protect what was left of Rachel's voice. They cataloged everything: the tapes, the photos, the mattress, the journal. Each item bagged, sealed, and numbered. But there was no joy in the discovery, only grief. A sense of time stolen, lives erased, truth buried under rust and plywood. As they stepped back into the light, Carla looked again at the broken fence. The shed had been hidden in plain sight. And what they'd found inside changed the shape of the case entirely. Because Sarah Joy wasn't just a name on a cassette. She was still out there. But what investigators discovered behind the orphanage fence was only the surface. What lay deeper was a truth no one was prepared to face. 2 weeks after the discovery of Rachel's journal and the S.J. tape, federal agents acting on the journal's coded clues launched a raid on a secluded farm 30 miles west of Nogales, Arizona. The property, legally listed under a defunct agricultural nonprofit, had long been suspected of ties to the Church of Light's auxiliary healing retreats. For years, no one had dared push harder. Now they had reason. The operation began at dawn. Black SUVs cut silently across the dirt road. A tactical team moved in first, guns lowered but alert, sweeping the chapel, the farmhouse, the greenhouse. At first glance, everything seemed deserted. Then an officer noticed a small hatch in the floor beneath the altar of the chapel, camouflaged with rugs and loose tiles. It was locked, reinforced from beneath. The battering ram was brought in. With one shuddering strike, the door split open, and a gust of warm, foul air rushed upward like a breath held for years. A narrow wooden staircase descended into darkness. The team descended slowly, flashlights cutting through the black. What they found would haunt every one of them. 12 women, thin, dirt-streaked, huddled in the corners of what appeared to be a converted storm shelter. Some wore choir robes, others slept on mats laid over concrete. Their eyes flinched at the light, many too terrified to speak. One woman pressed herself against the wall, mouthing silent prayers. Another clutched a scrap of fabric as if it were a child. And then, from the back of the room, someone stood. She stepped forward with painful slowness, her bare feet dragging. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face sunken but unmistakably familiar. A tech officer whispered under his breath, "Is that?" She raised a shaking hand and said, in a rasp barely audible, "Did you find Rachel's Bible?" It was Sarah Joy, presumed dead, forgotten by all but a few, now 44 years old. Her voice cracked as she confirmed who she was. She was taken upstairs and wrapped in blankets. Paramedics checked her vitals, but Sarah kept asking the same question over and over as if it anchored her to the present. "You found Rachel's Bible." When Detective Carla Morno nodded, Sarah wept, not from pain but from something deeper. In the following hours, as her mind cleared and her breathing steadied, Sarah began to speak. First in fragments, then in full memories. She told of the years underground, of punishments disguised as purification, of prayer used as control. She described how the girls were made to confess doubts in public circles, how they were isolated, starved, and shamed into obedience. Some didn't make it. Her hands trembled as she described Rachel, how she had tried to shield the younger girls, how she hid extra food in her robe sleeve, how she copied verses from Isaiah into scraps of fabric and tucked them into cracks in the cellar wall. "She believed someone would find us," Sarah said. "She said truth always has a way of leaking through." Sarah paused often. Her body remembered more than she wanted to, but when she spoke of Miriam, she broke. "The last night," she whispered, "Miriam knew what was coming. They said she was too vocal, too soft, too dangerous. Before they took her, she sang." Sarah covered her face. "A lullaby we used to hum in the chapel, she sang it through the wall." For me, her voice was shaking, but she made it through to the final line. The agents nearby stood frozen. Carla wrote nothing, just listened. There was nothing to write that could capture the sound Sarah mimicked, a broken melody. A sister's last gift. That day, Sarah Joy gave investigators names, locations, routines. She gave truth that had been buried in prayer rooms and locked basements. And she gave Rachel and Miriam something else, proof that their suffering had not been in vain. But even with Sarah's testimony, the most damning evidence still lay hidden in ink and pages. Even with Sarah's words still ringing in their ears, the question remained. How had Rachel known so much, and more importantly, how had she kept it hidden? The answer, as it turned out, had been tucked between verses of scripture for 17 years, hiding not in the shadows, but in plain sight. Forensic analysts began combing through Rachel's red-bound journal, the one recovered from the orphanage shed. At first glance, it looked like ordinary devotionals, thoughts, prayers, verse reflections. But as one analyst noted, there was too much symmetry. Certain verses from the book of Isaiah were marked in repeated intervals. Words were underlined in seemingly random patterns. Margins were dotted with what looked like meaningless initials, CL, SJ, TM, G21. Then came the breakthrough. A junior analyst noticed that every circled verse corresponded to a number, a chapter a verse, and what she suspected were coordinates. Layered against old church property maps and mission route reports, a pattern began to form. Rachel had embedded a cipher, one that linked verses to physical locations. Isaiah 21:2, for instance, matched coordinates leading to a disused storage facility just outside San Diego. Isaiah 45:7 pointed to a dilapidated mission home in Guatemala once listed under the Church of Light's Sister Sanctuary network. Another set of verses aligned with regions around Houston, Laredo, and even parts of Belize. It was a map, but not of geography alone. The initials matched names, trafficked women. CL stood for Carmen Lopez, a girl who disappeared from McAllen in 2003. TM likely referenced Teresa Marquez, last seen near Brownsville in 2005. Rachel had memorialized them through scripture, matching their last known locations to verses she knew someone someday would take seriously. What shook the team most, however, was that several of these coordinates pointed not to abandoned structures, but to active ministries. Places still operating, still accepting donations, still holding Sunday service. Carla Morno called for a full-scale interagency review. DHS, FBI, and Interpol were looped in. International trafficking patterns were cross-referenced, and the results were chilling. The Church of Light wasn't just a rogue institution. It had become a transnational web of exploitation, wrapped in religious language, moving women and girls through a network of healing centers, retreat farms, and foreign missions. One analyst put it plainly, where the sheep are quietest, the wolves run deepest. Rachel's journal, this quiet red book written in secret, by candlelight, under threat of death, was now the key to unraveling it all. She had documented not just names and places but behaviors, leadership patterns, ritual language, code words used to mask abuse. She wrote of how scripture was weaponized to silence dissent and how forgiveness was twisted into control. She noted phrases repeated during punishments, phrases Sarah had also remembered. Every verse became a thread, and as the threads pulled tighter, the net around the organization began to fray. What haunted Carla the most was realizing how close the world had been to losing it all. If Elias hadn't downloaded that Bible file, if Lydia hadn't recognized the names, if Sarah hadn't survived, the journal might have stayed buried. But Rachel had believed. That truth in time would rise. Still, belief wasn't enough to stop what was coming. Because while the authorities were just beginning to understand the scale of what Rachel tried to expose, the ones still running those ministries, the ones she had named only in hints, hadn't disappeared. They were still out there, watching, listening, and now, finally, afraid. But while Rachel's journal pulled back the curtain, it didn't yet reveal who was standing center stage. That would come in the form of whispers, paperwork, and a single, unforgettable name that had hovered behind sermons for decades: Bishop Daniel Reyes. To the public, he was the face of healing. Footage still existed of him blessing infants in white robes, dipping his hand into baptismal water with the gravity of a man chosen for holiness. His voice, calm and measured, preached about redemption and suffering as necessary paths to spiritual strength. But behind closed doors, behind the velvet curtain of church authority, he brokered lives like commodities. As investigators traced the ciphered map from Rachel's notebook to real-world evidence, offshore bank accounts surfaced, tied not just to false ministries, but to shell corporations registered in Panama and Belize. Transactions were logged in the hundreds of thousands. Donations, supposedly earmarked for missions, rerouted into private security firms and untraceable transport logistics. But the real blow came not from numbers, but from names. Survivors from the Arizona basement identified Reyes with trembling fingers. He decided who stayed, one woman said through a translator, and who disappeared. Another described how his presence in the chapel signaled a turning point. When Bishop Reyes came to visit, someone was always taken away within the week. Detective Carla Morno obtained court approval to wiretap a former junior pastor named Vincent Hale, who had left the Church of Light in 2012. What Hale confessed in a closed-door interview would remove all doubt. The bishop called them selection rites, he said, staring at the table. His sermons were rehearsed to mask decisions. When he spoke of offering the lambs to the altar, that meant identifying the next girl. Hale provided names, dates, and internal memos, signed with Reyes's initials, but it was Sarah Joy's testimony that added the deepest wound. In one tearful recollection, she described how, in her 4th year underground, she was brought up during a visit from Reyes. "He made me kneel," she whispered. Said it was an honor. I had to place my hands on the heads of 2 new girls and bless them, like I was passing on some sacred torch. She looked down, voice cracking. I felt like I became part of it that day. The arrest warrant came swiftly after that. But Ray's had vanished. His home was empty, his personal chapel stripped bare. His driver was missing. His last known location was traced to a private airstrip in Texas. Yet something about his escape felt rushed, sloppy, as though he hadn't expected it to fall apart so fast. For years, he had relied on silence, on fear, on the myth that no one would dig too deep into a ministry that talked of salvation and sacrifice. But the cracks were no longer cracks, they were open wounds. And justice, in this case, would not come with sirens wailing down a boulevard. It would begin quietly, with someone reaching into an old drawer and finding what he'd hoped was long forgotten. And while Bishop Ray's remained out of reach, something long buried stirred to the surface, quiet, accidental, and deeply human. Weeks after the raid and arrests, a restoration crew returned to the main chapel of the Church of Light in El Paso. They weren't investigators, just tradesmen and volunteers, tasked with sanding pews, rewiring sconces, and preparing the sanctuary for future services, this time under new leadership. But behind the pulpit wall, beneath a warped panel half blackened from a long-forgotten electrical fire, a worker's chisel struck something soft. Not wood, paper. It was a scorched envelope, sealed with wax long melted into the fibers. The edges were brittle, ash clung to the flap. Inside, carefully folded, was a letter charred at the corners but legible at its core. The handwriting was tight, slanted, and unmistakably female. At the bottom, though partially burned, one could still read the name, Miriam O'Donnell. The letter had no date, no salutation, but it carried weight. At first it read like a diary entry, short lines, shaky ink. Then the rhythm changed. Phrases mirrored Rachel's style. Keywords were underlined. Diversion, chapel key, north fence. As investigators pored over the coded message, its meaning grew heartbreakingly clear. This was Miriam's final account of their escape plan. She described the night they chose to run, how Rachel had insisted on staying behind to distract the guards, how Sarah had hesitated, whispering prayers until the last moment. Miriam wrote about the moment the back door of the chapel unlocked, a small mercy bought with Rachel's defiance. She described hearing Rachel cry out, then fall silent. She had no time to look back. Midway through the letter came a single sentence, scrawled darker than the rest. If I vanish, know I fought to make faith holy again. Detective Carla Morno stood silently as the letter was read aloud in the chapel's side office. No one spoke. The room was still, save for the faint hum of the wall fan. Sarah Joy, now living under protective care, asked to hear it twice. She closed her eyes, then she whispered, "She didn't run for herself. She ran for us." 2 days later, the coroner's report returned. Burned remains discovered in the field near St. Mercy's orphanage, previously believed to belong to only one victim, were in fact 2. DNA confirmed. One set belonged to Rachel Lynn, the other to Miriam O'Donnell. The truth, once murky, now had names, had flesh, had ashes. El Paso prepared a vigil. Word spread quickly, and on a warm Sunday evening, more than 200 people, strangers, neighbors, survivors, gathered in the Church of Light. The same building where their voices had once been silenced now held nothing but song. Candles were passed down the aisles. Faces flickered in golden light. A young girl placed Rachel's Bible at the altar. It was open to Isaiah 58, where Rachel had underlined one verse again and again. "And your righteousness will go before you. The glory of the Lord will be your rear guard." Miriam's favorite hymn, "Be Thou My Vision," played gently in the background. Sarah sat near the front. She clutched the letter in her lap. A former congregant read it aloud, every word soaked in reverence. As the names were spoken, one by one, a gust of wind swept through the open windows, causing the candles to flicker, but not go out. Some believed it was coincidence, others a sign. But either way, that chapel, once hollowed by secrets, now pulsed with a different kind of silence, one filled with memory and mourning and the first fragile notes of healing. And yet, even as candles melted low and hands reached across pews, one truth remained. Not every ghost had been laid to rest. But even as candles flickered and Miriam's words echoed through the chapel, the world outside was bracing for a reckoning. Because now that the truth had names, it also demanded justice. In the spring of the following year, the trial of Bishop Daniel Reyes began, drawing national attention, protests, and a flood of news cameras that lined the courthouse steps each morning like sentinels. For the first time in decades, the Church of Light stood stripped of its holy armor, exposed as something far more sinister beneath the robes and hymns. Inside the courtroom, the air was tight with expectation. Survivors sat behind glass, their voices trembling as they recounted rituals, punishments, lost names, and buried faith. Some had never spoken publicly before. Others could barely finish a sentence without tears. But each word added weight to the testimony, like stones placed gently on the altar of truth. Among them sat Sarah Joy, her hair now short, her hands folded, her voice steady. When called to the stand, Sarah didn't begin with facts or fear. Instead, she opened a folded sheet of paper. It was Rachel's, an excerpt from Isaiah 58, handwritten and underlined. She read it softly. "You will be called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets with dwellings." Then she paused, looked at the jury, and added, "She wrote this the night before she died." There was a stillness in the room. Not courtroom silence, but reverence. Then Sarah did something no one expected. She sang, just a few notes, fragile, almost breathless. A hymn Rachel had once taught her by candlelight when their hands were bound and their hope was flickering. The melody floated through the courtroom like smoke, uninvited and unforgettable. One juror wept openly. The judge remained still, his eyes misted. Even Reyes, stoic until then, looked down. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. Multiple life sentences. Conspiracy, trafficking, assault, obstruction of justice. The Church of Light's legal structure was dismantled, its assets frozen, its satellite branches across the U.S. and Central America shuddered. A coalition of survivors, churches, and investigators moved swiftly to convert former mission homes into shelters for women in recovery. Sarah Joy chose a quieter path. She moved to a small home on the outskirts of El Paso and began writing. Her first book, Faith in the Ashes, reached thousands, many of whom had once doubted their own story or been told their pain was part of God's plan. She spoke at churches, schools, recovery centers, not to relive the horror but to remind others that healing wasn't weakness. It was witness. And on the one-year anniversary of the verdict, Sarah returned to the now empty Church of Light. No congregation, no banners, just bare pews and sunlit windows. She brought nothing with her but a candle. As she walked toward the altar, she passed the pew where Rachel used to kneel. She paused, bent down, and lit the candle from a match. No music, no prayers spoken aloud, just breath and memory. Then, as if whispering into a presence unseen, she said softly, "You kept your promise, Rachel." She stayed for several minutes, then stood and left. But some promises never needed words, they were carved in faith. As Sarah stepped out of the chapel that final time, the sun had already begun its descent, casting long shadows across the silent pews and stained glass. But the silence no longer felt hollow. It felt earned. Because after 17 years of buried truth, the voices that once cried in darkness had been carried into light. The story of Rachel, Miriam, and Sarah wasn't just about a disappearance. It was about faith that refused to be twisted, and courage that refused to go quietly. These were women who faced down evil not with weapons, but with verses, notebooks, and a kind of clarity that frightened those who used fear as their gospel. And in the end, it was a teenage boy reading Isaiah, just trying to finish a school project, who stumbled across the first whisper. A whisper hidden in numbers, a map written in scripture, A breadcrumb trail left by Rachel, who knew she would never walk free, but believed someone someday might read between the lines. Sarah Joy didn't survive because she was the strongest. She survived because someone loved her enough to plan for her freedom, even after death. The grief still lingers. The memory of what was lost never fully fades. The chapel where they once sang still stands, but the songs are no longer for God alone. They are for truth, for justice, for the girls who didn't come back, and the ones who did. As Sarah once said, standing before the jury, faith isn't silence. It's the courage to speak when everyone else kneels to fear. And maybe that's the lesson here. Sometimes truth takes 17 years. Sometimes it takes a hymn, but when it comes, it doesn't whisper, it roars. If this story stayed with you, tell us how. Type 1 if you believe Rachel's courage mattered, or share what justice means to you. And if you're drawn to stories where faith, mystery, and resilience collide, don't forget to subscribe. Because here at Missing Stories, we believe that even silent prayers are heard.